Okay, so this is the Willamette Week endorsement interview for Oregon House District 39, which has got a little bit of Portland, a lot of Clackamas County. What else? Goes south pretty far?
No, it's all of Happy Valley and North Clackamas.
North Clackamas, okay.
A little sliver of Milwaukee running right up to Gamba's district, and then, as you said, a little sliver
north
of Portland.
What neighborhoods are those, the Portland ones? Is it outer, it's southeast?
Yeah, it'll be southeast, so, and just right over the hill from Mount Scott.
Oh, yeah, right, okay. Yeah. We were supposed to have 2 candidates here today, but we have one. April Dobson, why don't you take a couple minutes, tell us about yourself and why you're running for the seat?
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, I am a mom of 3 always amazing and occasionally irritating children, as well as an elected member of the North Clackamas School District Board. I was born and raised here in Oregon. I grew up in the Beaverton area, and then my folks moved out to Scappoose right before my senior year, so I graduated from Scappoose High School, whose mascot is still very unfortunately the Indians.
No way.
And then I got my my Bachelor of Arts at the University of Oregon, and shortly after that met my husband, who was a grad student at Oregon State. So college football season is barely civil in our household.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we agreed on after we'd had our 3 kids was that we wanted to make our home in Happy Valley. And so we moved there in 2016 for a couple of reasons. One is we were looking for a really good school district, and North Clackamas had a very good reputation. We needed a little bit more support. Our middle kiddo is on the autism spectrum. And the other reason was that we needed to be closer to our parents. They were getting older and unfortunately in some cases sicker, and they were just going to need a lot more help from us than they had in the past. So for most of my career, my job has been raising our 3 kids and caring for our elderly parents. So
that's
if you're looking for a definition of sandwich generation, I am it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think it's taught me a lot about the kinds of everyday struggles facing a lot of Oregonians. Everything from unaffordable housing and costly health care to underfunded public education systems. So I think I decided that I wanted to run for the state legislature because it seems really hard right now to live and work in Oregon without facing one or more of those issues. And I don't think it needs to be that way. I think Oregon has the capacity to be a place where you can put down roots, provide for yourself and your family, be healthy and be safe. And just being an Oregonian should be all the luck you need to do that. So I'm looking forward to serving in the legislature and doing my level best to try and make that happen for folks.
So your elected experience is on the school board.
That's correct.
And then any other civic engagement?
Lots of civic engagement, mostly on the community organizing side. I have worked to, so for a number of years, my husband and I lived in Los Angeles for his work, and down there in the second largest school district in the nation, I took on our superintendent and the LAUSD board to get school libraries reopened. Because after I started making a fuss about our local elementary school library being closed, our state rep started looking into it, and it turned out that over 300 school libraries across LAUSD were closed because of funding issues. All the while, our superintendent at that time was, buying iPads, for every student. And so that action that I took, organizing students and families, and getting us on the news on our local public radio station, triggered this access assessment district-wide, and within a year, all of those libraries were opened again. And I just think it was a really good lesson for me that if you have the resources and the time, to speak up when you see something that isn't right, that you can actually get things done. Here in Oregon, as I said, we moved back in 2016. I've done some similar community organizing both around getting funds together for diversity library collections for our new schools that we've been building out in North Clackamas, as well as getting our community to put funds together to help local families who are struggling with housing and food insecurity. So those are the things that I do in the community, when I'm not busy with the kids and busy caring for the parents, two of whom, unfortunately, we've lost to terminal illnesses in the last 5 years. But that's why we moved home. We wanted to see them through that and keep our parents, in their homes for as long as possible.
I've been there, done that. So did you say you worked out of college for a little while, or did you go right into?
Yeah, I did. I worked in logistics and operations for a nonprofit, a museum and performing arts center in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. So that was all LA.
That was LA.
Yeah. Where'd you live in LA?
We lived in West LA for 5 years, and then in the Valley in Northridge for another 10 before we moved back up. And my husband worked for a small think tank defense contractor down there. He's a big data analyst.
So. Oh, is he? Okay. Yeah. All right. So you're glad to be back in Oregon, for
very glad to be back.
So?
Yeah. Okay. And we're a little further east, than where I grew up. I grew up in Beaverton, but Scott grew up in Boring, and so this was close to home for him, and closest, to the parents who were the sickest at that time.
Sure.
So. So we're back in his hometown, and we've been there for more than 8 years now, and it really feels like home to us.
So you're running, Janelle Bino's running for Congress.
Correct.
And she said she's given up her seat no matter what?
Yeah, she did. Okay. She was really supportive of my run for school board. We were facing a slate of candidates backed by the Oregon Moms Union in our school board race a year and a half ago. And so she was paying close attention to that, and was, a really good advisor, throughout that campaign. As 4 of us, only one incumbent ran to keep our board heading in the direction that it currently, was, without experiencing a Newberg-style flip. And so we got to know each other, really well through that process. And after I had won the election, all 4 of us did, beating back those Oregon Moms Union candidates. She let me know that she was planning to run for Congress, and she asked me if I'd be interested in running for her seat.
Oh, she did? She asked?
Yeah, she did.
Wow.
So I had, just won my school board race, and I was really focused on that service. But the more we talked about it, the more I realized, these 2 positions are not in conflict as long as everybody's feeling like they're getting enough time and attention. Yeah. And that I can do, more good on a bigger scale if I win this House seat. Yeah. So here we are.
What issue would you like to tackle first? What do you think is most important for your district?
My one policy.
You were ready for this one.
my one policy. Well,
it could be more, but
sure.
Let's rank them.
Well, so the things that are, that's less important in Clackamas County, I can tell you. We're waiting to see how this, Portland version of ranked choice plays out before we get on board with that. So for me, obviously my passion is education, and as I said, I've got a child on the autism spectrum who we've had to do a lot of work to make the public education system work for them. So one of the things that I found particularly frustrating is the special education cap that we have in place in Oregon right now. So we cap state funds for special education at 11%. Which means 11% of our qualified students in the district.
Only 11%.
That's
can get.
11% of students in the district can get special education funding.
What happens if 12% are?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question, Rachel, because what happens is every district has to dig into general funds to provide that support for their students. Okay. And so in a district like mine, 18% of students qualify for special education resources. They have IEPs in place, but only 11% of them get funding. And math, 40% of the students who qualify for special education funding are not getting that funding from the state.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's not magic money floating around, that can just be thrown at this problem, but it's unacceptable that, districts across Oregon are being asked to make up that kind of difference, because not every district is North Clackamas. We have a very supportive community who love their public schools, and they have a deeper capacity to contribute in the form of bonds and levies to make up that difference, to help our students get the education they need. But that's not the case in districts across Oregon, and there's 197 of them. So the fact that the state has left this, to each district to figure out on their own is just unacceptable to me. So my number one priority when I get in the legislature is to sit down at a table with Republicans and Democrats in urban districts, rural districts, and suburban districts like mine, and hammer out what the workable solution to this problem is, because these children are already struggling with a higher burden than the average student, and they are being underserved. So we need to sit down and figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. So that's your big focus.
That's my
What else?
Yeah,
what
that's
else
my
needs?
first
What
priority.
else do you think needs to happen to improve the life of people in the district?
So folks in our community, as I'm knocking on doors and talking to people, they care a lot about cost of living, they care a lot about transportation, they care a lot about public safety.
What's the transportation part look like out there? I mean, what's their concern? Traffic? Tolling?
Yeah, traffic and tolling.
Or-
I mean, it's really, people in Clackamas County, residents of Clackamas County are incensed at the idea of tolling on I-205.
I've heard that.
We are a community who pays, who pays our taxes and watches willingly as most of that money goes, to Multnomah County to be spent on,
You mean like tax money in general, not
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
And so there's really a feeling in Clackamas County that, that people are paying more than their fair share, because a lot of the services that their tax money goes to are not even in Clackamas County. So especially when it comes to things like transportation, there's $2 billion plus in federal, transportation money coming into Oregon next year. Zero of it is slated for any of the suburban arterials in Clackamas County. And folks are sitting in traffic for 45 minutes, an hour and a half, just trying to get 11 miles.
What are the roads out there that are really jammed up?
Sunnyside Road and 212 and 205. Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So, these are folks who moved out to Clackamas County in some cases to get out of Multnomah County or places that were more unaffordable. They came to find the good schools, and now they're sitting in these traffic jams because they can't afford to live in those other places.
What can you do in the legislature?
Well, I think they need an advocate, frankly. I think they need a vocal advocate, someone who will stand up and say, excuse me, I have a good relationship with Lynn Peterson and Christine Lewis on Metro, and we're talking about, the common sense ways that we can, improve transportation for Clackamas County. But like I said, none of that, those gallons of infrastructure money that are coming in next year are slated to address this problem. It's all focused on, I-5 and the bridge, and that's not going to help any of the people in my district.
Do you have a position on tolling?
Tolling sucks. It sucks for everybody. Nobody likes tolling. And look, I lived in Los Angeles for 15 years. I understand, that when you get a critical mass of cars on the road, you have to do something. We're never going to make it up with the gas tax. The number of EVs that we have every year is rising.
Yeah.
But there are, there are lots of things that we can look at, including indexing our DMV fees to the rate of inflation, because that hasn't happened, I don't know, ever.
Yeah.
And so that money is, going, less and less far every year. But, holistically, we need to look at it, not just as, how can we make things easier for folks in our urban areas, but in a place like Clackamas County where we are growing, we haven't touched our urban growth boundary. And in fact, sold a piece of it off to Tigard, I think, in the last couple of years, because they needed it for their expansion plan and we weren't using it. This is where we're going to be growing. This is where the population is rising, and where we need to address, beforehand, before it gets critical, these transportation issues. And instead, as usual in the state of Oregon, we're just 100% focused on where like the biggest crisis is right now, instead of forward planning for the crises that we can easily see coming down the road.
Yeah. How does, if you guys jump in, I don't want to monopolize
Go
here. How I've seen some encouraging data out of Clackamas County on homelessness and getting people into shelter. That's correct, isn't it? They just put something out recently. It sounded like
we're
doing quite well.
We're making some progress out there for sure. Now, I think it's fair to say, that we don't have the level of crisis with homelessness that some of the other counties have. But I am happy to see even our county commission, doing some work to deal with the houseless situation in Clackamas County. And I think going forward is just going to take a lot of collaboration. I think there's a lot of fighting in that area. It's a little bit Wild West over who's responsible for what. What responsibility does the state have? What responsibility does the county commission have? What responsibility do each of the cities have? Happy Valley is one of the fastest growing cities in Oregon a few years in a row right now. right there with Bend. And
it's amazing.
It is, there's just so much room to grow, and that's where people are going. So we have the room to fix these, to fix this housing crisis, but we need to build. We need to build more.
Yeah.
We need to do the land prep work, to make these developments possible. And we need a good plan, I think, for the city.
Are you on board with Tina Kotek's, Governor Kotek's, housing plan, trying to kind of grease the wheels a little bit to get more housing built?
Yeah, from what I know about it, I am. I don't know how realistic it is. What is it, like 36,000 units, I think, or something? And that's a great number. Saying that number and imagining that it's possible, probably feels good when you're looking at a problem this size in a state, where we've really, frankly, been anti-growth for decades. Keep everybody out. Don't build anything new. But realistically, I think we have to look at where that actual building is going to take place, and have a high degree of accountability for where money is being spent to prep land. We've got some developments in Happy Valley right now that are due to the change in policy about affordable housing building. And our kind of infill developments in some of our already established neighborhoods, which I'm all for.
Multifamily?
Yes, so it's like a cottage cluster, for example.
A lot of that,
But what happened was that the developers had, carte blanche because of this new rule to build, wherever they found space. But once they built their cottage clusters, they priced them at over $400,000 a piece.
Yeah, right.
That's not affordable housing.
Yeah,
no. And they're also, too small for, the people who want to spend $400,000 on a house. So they are sitting there empty.
So how do you moderate that market effect then? How do you make them cheaper?
That's a good question. That's a conversation I think that has to happen about, accountability. We can't just carte blanche give developers free rein to build whatever they want, wherever they want. This is back to the idea of collaboration. The city needs to be involved, and the state needs to be looking carefully at, who's taking most advantage of these policies, and whether or not what they're doing is actually benefiting the people that the state intended to help in the first place.
Does Oregon or any towns in your district have a tax on vacant properties?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure there's a county-wide tax. I don't believe that there's a city tax.
The county does have a tax on
I believe so.
So would you support an increase in that tax? Because it seems like that would stop exactly the situation. Investors trying to wait out the downside.
That's definitely one idea. And another one is to, increase the fee that we charge developers for building up the infrastructure around the pieces of land that they develop. Because we have these sort of fights out, in the Happy Valley area too, where, we don't have safe routes to school, for example. You've got kids who are, 3 houses away from an elementary school who can't walk to school because the the county and the city and the state are fighting about whose responsibility is to build sidewalks in what was once rural farmland.
Oh wow!
So you got a
there's
bus
no sidewalk for these kids.
Yeah, so
There's
you got a
that
bus
goes
picking
through
up
your
the
house?
kids and drives the kid 3 houses down to our brand new elementary school. So, this is the kind of stuff that makes me crazy as a parent of 3 kids. I want to streamline, and I want some efficiency in problem solving, and I want people interested in what is happening out in Clackamas County. It's not.
Sure, well, yeah, I mean.
It's not the hillbilly metro cousin that everybody thinks it is. We've got a lot of development going on out there. We've got amazing school districts and a lot of opportunity.
Is School District is that North Clackamas?
It's its own school district.
Okay.
So yeah, it's in Clackamas County, but it's not in the North Clackamas School District.
Yeah, they always beat Grant at things. My kids went to Grant, so we'll let that lie.
Okay.
Talking about the cost of living and the tolling, those are issues that I think traditionally, I think one reason Trump is holding where he is in the polls right now is because of people are so concerned about inflation. Can you contrast yourself with your opponent who we invited here today but who didn't come, Amy Reiner, who's running as a Republican and might be able to grab that kind of vibe, right, about cost of living, tolling, that sort of thing. How are you different from her?
Well, I think that you managed to highlight, one of the only things that my opponent and I agree on, and that is that we're against tolling, and that we think the cost of living, for working families is too high. I think where we diverge is in our ability to collaborate and come up with effective solutions. I have a broad coalition of endorsers, for example, both in unions and in business, who are interested in practical solutions to these issues and not in MAGA talking point dumpster fires. So,
is your opponent of MAGA talking?
In my experience, yes. She was a very vocal. She is one of the candidates who ran for the North Clackamas School District Board over a year ago and lost. And her message at that time was that she wanted a small group of parents to decide what books were okay to be in the libraries. She wanted what she calls ideology, but what appears to be veiled references to LGBTQ children and their families out of classrooms completely.
That's interesting because I just looking at her campaign page, she's appears to be married to a woman, has 3 kids. That's just not what I would expect. Is that? Well, I can't ask you to speak for her, but.
Yeah, I'm not in her head, and I'm happy that's the case. But I can say that I feel a lot of empathy, for a person who I imagine has the amount of self-loathing it takes to lash out at children.
And that's what happened.
Who just want to be seen. They want to show up to school and they want to be seen for who they are. And we have the capacity to embrace them and make them feel welcome and make sure they get a great education. There is just no need to waste time trying to argue about whether or not their definitions of themselves are accurate or appropriate. These are kids, and we welcome each one of them all the same. And
so that school board fight got pretty nasty, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty nasty. As I mentioned earlier, she's also in favor of school vouchers, school choice. Which, as far as I'm concerned, is just an effort to defund public education for the kids who will never have access to the private schools that she's in favor of. So yeah, I don't think that folks are interested in doing business, essentially, with someone who's focused on those kinds of culture war issues. They want practical solutions. I was knocking doors the other day. In that sliver of Milwaukee that's in House District 39, right up next to Mark Gamba's district, and we were talking to families who are 2 parents and 4 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment. These are not people who care about whether or not a pride flag is hanging in a classroom. They care about putting food on their table, keeping a roof over their heads, and making sure that their kids get a good education so they can have opportunities in their future. And I think the broad coalition of supporters that I have, everyone from law enforcement, to local businesses, to our union workers, demonstrates that that I'm a person who's going to be able to focus on those things and not be distracted by culture war garbage.
Where were you on Measure 110?
Measure 110. Measure 110.
Were you here for that? I guess you were, because 2016 it was.
Yes, yeah. So, yes, I was here for that, and Oregon has this ballot measure process, that allows the people of Oregonian, the citizens of Oregon, to bring anything they want, to the point of laws we have to follow. So here we are in this situation where the majority of residents of Oregon decided that this measure was a good idea. Unfortunately, what they didn't know is that we had zero infrastructure in place to support their lofty goals contained within ballot measure 110. My brother-in-law is the commander of the Portland Police Bureau's Central Precinct right downtown.
Oh, wow.
And we've had a lot of conversations.
Brother?
Yes, yeah, my brother-in-law, Craig Dobson.
Yeah, okay.
Commander Craig Dobson. And we've had a lot of conversations about how, a lot of times the people that work for Craig, the officers that work for Craig, are the only friendly faces that people who are living on the streets and struggling with addiction see. It's the only access they're going to get to resources. Maybe the only kind word they get in a day is when those officers are walking around and not just stepping over them, but checking in with them and seeing if they need any help. And it was incredibly frustrating to Craig that that not only did they not have the resources to help these folks, but there was nowhere to send them when they found them. Not one person got the rehabilitation bed that they needed in order to work on their addiction and recovery issues. So that was frustrating, and I think that happens a lot in Oregon, both because of the ballot measure process, the citizen ballot measure process.
So did you vote for it, or?
So I voted for Measure 110 because I wanted us to do something.
Yeah.
But I recognized as I was doing it that it wasn't going to work. I hoped it would be a conversation starter about what actually needs to happen. And I am really pleased that where we ended was we need to fix this. We need to make sure that we put some infrastructure in place so that what Oregonians want, which is help for these folks and getting them off the streets, that can actually happen. And
so House Bill 4002 is a good.
Yes, it's good. It's a start.
It's a start.
Yeah, it's a start.
Yeah.
But it's a big problem, and I think like a lot of crises facing Oregon, we tend to turn to them at their peak instead of seeing them coming from a mile away.
It didn't used to be that way.
It didn't used to be that way. Yeah, that's right.
It didn't. But so do you? It sounds like you're close to Representative Bynum.
Sure.
Do you see eye to eye? Pretty much, can people expect sort of you to carry her agenda forward, and do you differ in any meaningful way?
I would characterize us both as pragmatic Democrats. So we do have a lot of things in common, but there are some important areas where we don't agree. And I have to give her credit. She knows what those are, and she tapped me anyway. She saw someone who was both curious and compassionate and willing to do this work, and she asked me to serve. So
wow.
I deeply appreciate that.
What are the differences? Are they worth?
Well, I think if you look at my endorsements, you'll see that I have the support of a lot of unions, both labor and trades, and public safety as well. I have endorsements from the Clackamas County Sheriff Angie Brandenburg, the Oregon Chiefs of Police, the Oregon Sheriff's Association, and the Oregon State Troopers, as well as the endorsements I think that she had struggled with initially, at least in her tenure as a state rep with education.
Why do you think you got them where she didn't? I'm trying to remember that story, but
You know,
for you?
I don't know. I wasn't, paying too close attention to why, they chose not to endorse. It could have just been, that her opponent at that time was just more, hardcore for public education and for
And you
PERS
got
than
them
Janelle
because-
was. I got them because I have a demonstrated record of fighting for labor, being a vocal advocate, and championing Oregon's prevailing wage law. And Janelle's a small business owner,
Yeah.
and her priorities
Yeah.
are slightly different, as well as her personal
Yeah.
experience. So not every Democrat is a monolith. We contain multitudes, and so those are a couple of the areas where we differ. But I have deep respect for Janelle and the work she did while she was in the legislature, and the work I hope that she'll do when she makes it to Congress. So.
Yeah. Salem's, I mean, it's a big learning curve, right? If you get in, right? I mean,
Yep.
coming from not being an aide or not being somebody in
Yeah.
the Capitol, how are you gonna get up to speed? I'm just kind of curious. Like,
Yeah, sure.
It's gotta be like.
Well, I would like to think that I can use that to my advantage. Not being a political insider, but surrounding myself with people who know how the systems work, that I can just be free to use my voice and advocate for the things I think are important, and frankly, cut through the bullshit. Right? I mean,
Come on, this is a family recording.
I'm
Just kidding.
a mom of 3 kids. I don't have time for this. Okay, so yeah, and I really do anticipate being able to use that to my advantage. I'm not one for whatever the inside baseball in Salem is. I live in a purple district, and I think I'm in a really good place with these kids who are still in school and these parents who are aging to say exactly what I think and just call it like I see it. And I will say, to the credit of both my endorsers and the Democratic leadership, all that they've asked is that I be honest with them and tell them, what I think about something and which way I'm leaning. I will give my blind fealty to no one, and I would not have run, under any other circumstance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I'll be fine.
Okay, great. Do you guys have anything?
I don't.
We good?
We're good.
Wow, this is great.
Great.
What did we miss? What's the hard question you anticipated that we didn't ask?
I don't know. We were not from you, certainly. I think we've touched on a lot of the things
Okay.
that myself and my team thought were going to be really important. I don't know. You didn't ask me to give grades for the legislators who are currently serving, or for the governor.
Yeah.
We should ask for a grade for the governor.
A grade for the governor?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give Governor Kotek a B, because I was really pleased to see that she worked to recalculate that current service level funding for public education. I think that was really smart and really important, and very much needed. But I would like to see a much higher level of transparency and spending accountability at the state level, and that's on her. So I look forward to seeing that increase in the years to come.
How about, since he's your neighboring district, Mark Gamba? How are you? Do you two get along? And
Yeah, no,
same.
I really like Representative Gamba, and I've followed him for a number of years. His work, especially on environmental issues, I think has been brave, and I would say Mark, as well as the rest of my fellow Democratic legislators, I'm going to give a B-. I love them, and I know they work hard. But I really think there's just too much putting that cart before the horse, and not focusing on infrastructure and on the everyday kinds of things that could make life for kids and working families in Oregon just a little bit better. Republicans, I'm going to give an incomplete, because you don't get a grade if you don't show up to class. So
Is there
school's out.
Is there good one? Is there a fresh woman, man, legislator that you've kind of watched in action over the last couple of years who you think is, how you'd like to proceed?
I love Rep. Emerson Levy. I think she's really smart. I think she's also a good coalition builder. I think she says what she thinks, and and has just staked out like a no-nonsense territory that
What's your
I
district?
really appreciate. Emerson's in Bend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so right up there next to the district
Yeah.
Anthony Broadman's running for now.
Okay, got it.
And Jason Cross.
So she's an inspiration and a...
Yeah, and a mentor. Yeah, so I have a lot of respect for her and for the work she's doing.
Got it. All right, well, this is
We
great.
have a fun question.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, fun question. All right, what you got? Hit me.
You ask it, because...
What is it?
No, you do
I
it.
love it.
I know in the primary,
Try it
people
again.
had to choose
Try
who
it
they were
again,
gonna
please. Let's
be in a
go.
movie. Who's gonna
He's
play them in a
gonna do
movie?
this.
No.
Okay, all right.
It is. What were you best known for in high school?
Ooh,
Like, did you get a best of award? Did you...
I think I was probably best known for being like adventurous and eclectic in high school. I was just as likely to be camping and like fly fishing across the state with my family. My mom wrote this fishing guide, Fishing in Oregon, for like 35 years.
Wait, who's your mom?
Maddie Sheehan, just the
She wrote a
author of
fishing
Fishing in
guide?
Oregon. Yeah, fly fishing guide, the Bible of Oregon fly fishing.
Whoa.
So that's
Whoa.
how I grew up, traveling, the state.
So you know all the streams.
Yeah, streams, lakes, rivers, hit me. So yeah, and she actually just published her final edition of that book a couple of years back,
Wow.
and retired. But yeah, so I was just as likely to be found doing that as showing up for shows at X-Ray Cafe.
Nice.
And
Didn't consider a little bit just taking on the mantle and continuing to publish that book? Just
it's for sale if you're interested. She's selling the rights right now. She's ready. She's ready to pass the mantle.
No kidding.
Yeah. But
Wow.
yeah.
Did you read? I'm sure your mother has. What's the book about fishing and fly fishing in Oregon? Oh, the River Wye.
River Wye? Yeah, of course.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
That's great.
Yeah. So I have some
remember
friends
that
who are
book
big
from
fly.
them. Oh, you
fisher
do?
people. Yeah, they're gonna be like. They're gonna be
It
like,
comes
wow.
up oddly in really strange situations. The Oregon Trail lawyers
Really?
freaked out, as well as
What do you mean,
the
like-
Firefighters Association.
Oh, they were probably like.
Oh yeah, they were like pulling her book off the shelf, like, "This is how I hope your mom's book. Can you help me get it signed?"
Oh my God. What's the prettiest stream or river you've been to, or what's one of them? I know it's a tough question, but
That is a tough question. I would say our favorite family camping place is Hosmer Lake. It's just a really special place. But the Deschutes River,
Yeah.
I think,
It's amazing.
was absolutely the most pristine and wild. Of the places that we spent our time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend French Glen in November to anyone who's thinking about it.
oh,
The Steens Mountains.
love that. I love
really
that
chilly.
though. But it's great out
3
there.
feet deep in snow in November.
Yeah.
But
you were
yeah.
out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. We were everywhere.
Yeah, I
She
love
she
that.
met with fish biologists all over the state
Oh, no kidding.
to do about every 4 years an update for the book after she wrote it in the early '80s. So.
How'd your mom get into fly fishing?
She moved to Oregon from the Midwest, and in the early 70s,
Oh, wow.
and she determined for herself that there were 2 things you needed to do at that time to become a real Oregonian, and one of them was to climb Mount Hood, which she did,
Wow.
and the other was to learn how to fly fish, and so that's what she did.
That's terrific.
Yeah. It was great. It was a great life between her and my dad, who was a labor and land use lawyer,
Okay.
and who actually wrote a book on prevailing wage law in Oregon.
Jeez.
Which was one of my first grunt work jobs after college, doing research for the book.
For the book?
Making copies. Yep. So I learned a lot, about what it really means to be an Oregonian, or at
Yeah.
least what being an Oregonian means to me. So
Terrific.
yeah.
Well, good. Hey, this was fun.
Yeah, it was great
Yeah.
meeting you guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry we didn't have an opponent or any fireworks,
no.
but it was good talking to you.
Not to tip my hand.